Yeah, we've seen a lot of things in the first part of our session. What are the conclusions? At least this, that there is a death of our being ourselves, starting from a dualistic situation in which the self is identified with the limited form and quality, to the non-dual situation in which there is no duality between the perceiving subject and the perceived object. That it is a scale of duality to non-duality. And that it is important to know where you have your own emphasis, your own point of gravity. That can be everywhere. A further conclusion is that the transition from duality to non-duality is possible at any point of the universe, at any point of development. Further, that it should be always a very concrete and lively experience. Therefore, we went back to our bodily being and bodily experience. And with non-duality, it's easily experienced as a being experience. Going back to your bodily being, then there is a transition from duality to non-duality. That we saw. That being experience should be very lively, very actual, so clear that there remains no doubt at every step. Further, that development from duality to non-duality has many stages. In Advaitic literature or in talks, it is important to see for yourself at what level belong those quotes. When they're spoken about, oh, you are consciousness, what's the meaning of that? Is it at the level of the perceiver consciousness? Or at the level of infinite chit consciousness? It's very important to be very clear about it, to know what are all those possibilities, because otherwise you don't know where you are, and you don't know to place all those words which were spoken, the words which you were reading. You have to know, oh, these are the possibilities, and now I see, oh yeah, that level. So it is important to see for yourself how lively is my experience. And how far goes my experience? How is it with me, myself? Can you stay at the level of the perceiver consciousness? Can you have my home in the infinite I am without a center? Or can I see that there are conditions in it? And to let loose myself, drop the last qualities in that transition to the absolute. Yeah, then we would talk about science. There was a question about neurobiological results of investigation. That's a very specific question in which science is introduced into our discussion, where science is used to show that all qualities of our experience are caused by material processes. When I see that equation, then we have to look for another realm in which science is introduced in the Advaitic talks, in which new physics is used in order to show, and for some people to prove, that non-duality is the basic reality. That's quite another realm. But first of all, that idea that the neurobiological processes cause those experiences which we value very high in our spiritual development. First of all, you can see what's happening in that discipline of neurobiology. Then you see that people are doing experiments, for instance, stimulating certain parts of the brain, and then the person is asked, hey, what do you experience? And then, oh yeah, there are certain parts of the brain which by stimulation gives a certain kind of experience of non-duality. But what does it mean? Neurobiologists and neurophilosophers are eager to say, oh no, then all those experiences have no value. No basic value, of course, practical value, yeah, but it is not related to reality. And yeah, that are the materialists. But materialists say, oh, the basic reality is matter as we know it. But then, even then, you can see in that experiment, what is the context of that experiment? There is the scientist, the investigator, and there is a subject investigated. And when asked to the other as a person, what are you feeling? Oh, now I'm feeling this, now I'm feeling that. Taking into account that context, then some things are happening. For instance, that stimulation gives a certain experience. But it is that context that gives meaning to what the investigator does and what the subject says. So that whole situation is not a material situation. And that is the difficulty of science. Science is a certain activity of person living in a rich world, and with it talk with other people. And then they say, oh, now we are doing science, and what does it mean? That we close a certain circle, and in that circle we are only talking about material things, and we are doing only material things, stimulation, and so on. But you see that separation of science is not possible. As soon as the investigator is talking with the subject, then that is no science, no natural science, because there is communication and there are feelings. Those experiences does not belong to natural science. The neurobiologist can only say something about material things when he talks about stimulation of neurons, neuronal cells, and activating some neurons and brain circuits, and that's all. When he talks about experiences, then you have quite another realm. A realm of consciousness, of first-person experience. And then the neurobiologist says, oh no, I'm doing natural science, and what he or she is feeling or experiencing, that for me is an object, and I see that that is caused by my stimulation. But see that the context is much broader than only natural science. Much broader than the material context of what a natural physicist or physician or investigator wants to have. The natural science of the neurobiologist is that of classical science, not the new physics or so. No, it is the classical physics, classical biology, in which there are some objective processes and structures which he is studying. And in that sphere of material processes, at the point he says, hey, what's the experience? Do you see that it exceeds, that is beyond the realm of classical science? When you are talking with another person, you have a kind of intention. You are directed to that other person. What does it mean? That goes further than the material body. The idea of a person goes much deeper than that. you're directed to another person, you're talking with a person with has experiences. That realm, which is beyond matter, is not the object of natural science. When they are taken into account experiences, okay, you can do that, but see that the first context in which you are talking is much broader than that of natural science. In that broader context, you cannot say in the same way in which you say, oh, I have this and I drop it. That you can give a description in terms of Newtonian physics, and everything is clear. But the same thing you cannot do when you're talking about the experience of persons. Newtonian physics is useless for that. Neurobiology is useless for that. Because it is much more than only those impulses in the brain. Much more. The point is that also the scientist should have the limits of science in mind. In the realm of science, you can do many useful investigations. Okay. And even you can say, oh, when I stimulate one part of the brain, no, yeah, that has to do with some experiences. Then you are going further, but that are conclusion with a certain limitation. You cannot say it is a natural law. And there are experiences in which also is taken into account the way in which the person is accepting what the neurobiologist is saying. There are much broader contexts of understanding and of interpretation in the subject than that it would be a simple cause of stimulation. So logically you can say that the natural scientist should not mix fundamentally different categories. On the one hand, the material categories, and on the other hand, the first person experiential categories in consciousness. Now, this is one approach of the problem of science and spiritual development. Another approach, I talked about it in the first part of our session, starting from your own first-person experience, with the depth of that self-being, you can state that science has its place at the mental level. You are using and developing theories, concepts. You describe things in terms of concepts. You're investigating, starting from those concepts, doing some things, and then you are interpreting mentally the results. When that's your whole life for yourself, yeah, then okay, yeah, then science gives the highest truth. What science says about me that's the reality about me. And many people accept it. But when you are conscious on the level, for instance, at the perceiver consciousness, you see the limitations of natural science. That it is a construction, a conceptual construction, which is a basis of their activities. And a mental interpretation of the results. You see, I can identify with that image of man suggested by natural science, but that's not necessary. I'm the perceiving consciousness of that whole scientific activity, of all the words are spoken, of all those investigations. And what they are saying, I remain myself as the perceiver consciousness. When that's a very clear assessing the situation, then there is no doubt. When there is a photo of a MRI scan, you can say, am I that? Yeah, in a certain sense. But it is a very limited image of what I am. Every assessment of values of your bodily and mental being, every statement about it has its limitations. When you hear that, immediately you recognize it. Okay, in a certain sense, that belongs to me, but it is not the whole reality of myself. Was that more? That's that higher being myself, broader consciousness, broader being than that being which has been described by a scientist. We are our brain. It is an expression which is nonsense. And I hope that it is now clear why. Because we and brain are fundamentally different concepts. Gilbert Ryle has some examples of it. That when it comes to the university and sees every locality and the library and so on, and he saw everything, and then he asked, hey, and now are we going to the university? Then you see, university is of another categorical mode than all those things he saw. And you should not mingle those categories. It's a category mistake. So there is a material reality and there is another reality of first-person experiences. And you should not intermingle them, because then there is a category mistake. In Dutch we have an example. Hier zet men koffie en over. There are many things about which we are laughing because words from different category are brought together. I say, oh yeah. But bringing them together gives not an account of when reality